this countdown, we have the Taos Hum. Back in the early 1990s, residents of the town of Taos in north-central New Mexico started hearing a weird humming noise. Since then, more and more people have also heard this weird noise. They describe it as a mysterious and faint, low-frequency hum in the desert air. Now, only 2% of the residents have actually reported hearing this noise. Some believe that it's a result of mass hysteria, like one person heard it and then people were just freaking themselves out, being like, oh my god, I think I hear it too. Or they think it's the government spying on them or blasting them with some weapon. Now, equipment was set up and tests were done to see if they could detect this noise. And after a lengthy investigation, nothing was found. So, is it all in their heads? Or is the government up to something?
Coming in at number 9, if I were you, I'd get your camping gear ready. Write down a list of wishes and head out to the wilderness to witness the Perseid meteor shower set to occur on August 11th and 12th. They usually happen only once a year and is considered the meteor shower of the year. It is known as one of the most plentiful meteor showers, with over 50 to 100 meteor showers raining from the sky. That's potentially 100 wishes to make. Perseids are also known for creating fireballs, larger explosions of light that last longer than the average meteor. It should be viewable in Ontario and northern Quebec. So hopefully that works for you. The best viewing time is right before dawn, so stay up late or wake up early. Grab a cup of joe and a blanket and witness the magic. Coming in at number 8, if you think thunderstorms only happen on Earth, well, you're dead wrong, obviously. Considering the last 2 weeks have been Rain City, thunderstorms feel a little too common right now. But this thunderstorm not only occurs on a different planet, there have only been 6 recorded since 1876. The Great White Thunderstorm on Saturn occurs 1 every 29.5 Earth years. They are massive convective storms that appear as giant white blobs on the planet's observable surface. The last recorded storm was in 2010, which means within our lifetime we should see another one around 2040-ish. Just enough time for you to get a big awesome telescope so you can catch the wondrous event in your very backyard. And coming in at number 7, volcanoes, aka the pimples of the Earth's crust, or at least that's how I see them. Volcanoes may look just like your average Himalayan mountains, but are actually slumbering giants of destruction. There are many across the planet that are overdue to pop, some having not been disturbed for thousands of years. However, scientists have a list of volcanoes they are carefully watching that they think might explode in our lifetime. One such volcano is Mount Shasta in California, which last erupted in 1786 and is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the US. Mount Pattum in North Korea last erupted in 1903, and scientists also think it's almost ready, especially considering nuclear explosions nearby may have triggered it. Hopefully we don't experience these in our lifetime, but we better be ready if we do. Coming in at number 6, calling all Mark Twain fans. I know I reported this one on one of my previous videos, and apparently I said the name wrong. Sue me. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, I thought it was Holly's or Haley's. I don't know. To be fair, my roommates and I got into a fight about how it's pronounced, and even the internet is indecisive on how it's pronounced, so I'm gonna say it both ways. Anyways, Holly's comet became famous when Mark Twain tied his life and destiny to it, considering his life both began and ended in both the years it visited our lonely planet Earth. So this news is mostly for anyone born in 1986, as that was the last year Haley's comet was seen, and it's set to come back in 2061. Hopefully you don't pull a Mark Twain and you live longer than that, but be sure to mark it down anyways. Coming in at number 5, an aquatic rainfall. It's Raining Men by the aptly named Weather Girls is an iconic anthem and has the power to summon even the most deeply rooted wallflowers to the dance floor. Remember dances, guys? Those were fun. Anyways, but perhaps tadpoles or frogs might have been more accurate because though rare, it has been known to happen. Powerful thunderstorms, tornadoes, and waterspouts have powerful updrafts and can be known to sweep aquatic animals along with birds and insects up into the sky. But what goes up must come down, and one day you could be sitting down in a cafe and piles of frogs land on the canopy above you. Nobody knows when this is going to happen, and it doesn't always happen every time there's a thunderstorm. It's rare, which is why it's on this list. But the fact that it could happen anywhere means one day it might just happen to you. I honestly don't know which is more rare, raining frogs or being able to sit in a cafe. Coming in at number 4, this next one is definitely going to happen in our lifetime, as it's happening this very month. On May 26th, a total lunar eclipse is set to occur. A total lunar eclipse is when the closest and biggest full moon of the year will sweep through the Earth's dark umbral shadow. Total lunar eclipses like this one carry with them a wealth of lore and myths from around the world. The Mesopotamians believed that this was an attack on the moon by 7 demons, while today the Batamalima people in Togo and Benin believe that this is a time for people to come together and resolve feuds and their anger. The last time an event like this occurred on a supermoon was 2.5 years ago, so make sure to make it count. Coming in at number 3, we have triple Jovian eclipse. Next up, we have not 1, not 2, but 3 eclipses, except it's not on the moon, it's on Jupiter. The triple Jovian eclipse is really rare and can be identified by 3 black dots lined up on the surface of Jupiter. The black dots are 3 Galilean moons, Io, Callisto, and Ganymede. Jupiter has 16 moons in total, and the 3 mentioned are among the biggest in its orbit. The last time this happened was in 2004. It was spotted by the Hubble Space Telescope, but because it moves so fast over Jupiter's surface, it's been difficult for researchers to capture the entire event. But as the next Jovian eclipse is set to happen in 2032, they hope they'll be able to capture it in more detail. Coming in at number 2, a total solar eclipse. Unfortunately, you can't look at this bad boy straight on, so get ready to get crafty. The next total solar eclipse is set to appear in 2045. They are super rare, and the last one happened in 2017. Imagine where you'll be in 2045 and make sure you've got some proper eyewear with you. A total solar eclipse is when the new moon passes between the sun and the earth and casts the darkest part of the shadow on the earth. It looks like a disc is blocking the sun, but if you look at it straight on, you may go blind, so don't do that. But if you can, find a way. During annular and partial eclipses, the moon is only blocking part of the sun, but during this one, the whole world is cast in darkness, like the shortest night. As for the specific date, we don't know yet, so make sure to set a reminder for your future self to keep an eye out. Or don't. Keep your eyes shut. Don't look at it. And last but not least, number 1. Now this last one is not a natural phenomenon, but one we've started to create, and just how rare it will be in the future all depends on how far we go. When humankind first landed on the moon, it made the stars above us seem that much closer. And they keep getting closer. It takes a lot for humans to go to space, and it feels like we've been waiting a while to go to the moon. Because we have. It has been over 50 years since astronauts last set foot on the moon. But guess what? The next one is sooner than you think. The Artemis program is set to put boots on the moon, hopefully by 2024, though some expect it may even be as early as 2022, next year. Considering the year we've had, it's a wonderful thing to look forward to. It will also be the first time a woman and a person of color has ever set foot on the moon. But this time, they aren't just going to visit, they plan to stay for a while. While Apollo 17 only spent 3 days, Artemis plans to extend the trip to weeks, even maybe months. In February 2020, NASA began rigorous tests on the spacecraft Orion, which is equipped with life support systems and shuttle interfaces. It will dock with the Lunar Gateway, which will serve as the astronauts' base when exploring the moon. If this all goes well, their next plan is to launch a team to Mars.
Starting us off at number 10 is Henry Rathbone's Madness. Now if you don't know who Henry Rathbone is, that's fine because neither did I. Rathbone was a military officer and diplomat, and he was one half of the couple that shared the box seats with Abraham Lincoln and his wife Mary the night he was assassinated. As soon as Lincoln was shot, Rathbone tried to prevent John Wilkes Booth from escaping, but his left arm got deeply slashed from elbow to shoulder. No one thought the injury was that bad, with Lincoln having been shot in the head right next to him, but he ended up passing out from blood loss, and doctors realized the slash was right to the bone on his arm, and Booth managed to sever his artery as well. Now he physically survived, but that was the start of his mental downfall. In the years after the assassination, he just couldn't get over the fact he wasn't able to prevent the assassination. He started being paranoid that his wife Clara was cheating on him, he hated how she gave more attention to the kids than him, and even threatened her on many occasions. He was charged with all the murders but was declared criminally insane after blaming the attack on an intruder. He was committed to a mental asylum and spent the rest of his life there. I did not know that Abraham Lincoln assassination was that juicy until now.
Coming in at number 9, we have the dancing plague. This is the scariest thing I have ever heard of, I swear. So in 1518, the citizens of France were plagued by a weird illness. Basically, it caused them to dance uncontrollably and unwillingly for days. This lasted for 2 months until it just randomly stopped. It all started in July of 1518 when a woman named Miss Trophia started to begin dancing. She was unable to stop and kept dancing until she passed out. When she woke up, she continued to dance for days. Then suddenly it happened to 30 more people. Eventually, around 400 people were a victim to this weird dancing plague. In fact, it killed a couple people per day and injured hundreds. Now, there are a couple of theories as to why this happened. 1, they were all possessed by a demon. 2, they had overheated blood. Or 3, theory goes that they ate bread made from rye flour that was contaminated with ergot. Ergot is known to cause people to convulse. However, these are only theories. This mysterious case has never been solved. And does anyone know about that creepypasta about the song and dance man? Doesn't it sound like that story, but it like came to life? I swear to God, if he is real, I'm going with Elon Musk to Mars. This isn't even a joke. Moving on to number 8, we have the earthquake lights. This is something that occurs sometimes before, during, or after large earthquakes. Basically, blue, white, or multicolored lights have been seen flashing in the sky. The lights only lasted a few seconds, but the longest it has lasted has been a minute. Now, these lights aren't new. They have been reported back to around 373 BCE. The majority of reports, though, come from the 20th century. It's pretty weird and no one knows what causes it. In fact, scientists didn't even believe this was a thing until somebody captured it on video. In 2010, Chilean journalist Cecilia Lagos witnessed the earthquake lights. She said, and I quote, "I saw through my window while I was still in bed. I saw the sky changing colors. It was absolutely surreal. I really thought it was the end of the world. That was the most terrifying thing, seeing the sky changing colors." Now, there are some theories as to what causes it. One is that it's a result of rocks grinding against each other. Maybe it creates an electrical charge that makes the sky glow. Others believe that it's a warning sign sent from heaven that an earthquake is about to happen. Coming in at number 7, we have the black birds. Back in 2011, thousands of blackbirds in Arkansas dropped dead just after New Year's. Residents woke up to find thousands of dead red-winged blackbirds just laying on the ground. The dead birds on the road went on for miles, and residents were freaking out, which is totally understandable because I would have been like, yo, that's a bad omen, the world's about to end. Anyways, a town supervisor got the call and had to go clean up the birds. He said he cleaned up anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 dead birds. Isn't that crazy? And to this day, we don't know what made these birds all of a sudden just drop dead. Theory 1 is that the birds were killed by lightning or a high altitude hailstorm, whereas conspiracy theorists believe that it was a result of a sonic boom. Now, they did end up taking some of the birds in for testing, but they still couldn't determine their cause of death. In our 6th spot today, we have the Pattum Crater. This is the name of a giant crater located in Siberia. It's about 520 feet wide and 139 feet tall, and we literally don't know how it formed or what the heck happened. The crater was first officially reported in 1949 by a Russian geologist, but it dates back to over 500 years ago. Some believe that it formed as a result of a nuclear explosion, or a steam explosion that happened back in the day from things shifting around in the Earth's core. Then others believe it to be more paranormal. Locals have noticed that the area surrounding it is dead. Nothing will grow there. On top of that, animals refuse to go anywhere near it. So they believe something spooky or sinister is going on with this crater thing. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Naga Fireballs. Every year, hundreds of fireballs explode out of Thailand's Mekong River. Since then, they have been given the name the Naga Fireballs. You heard me. Fireballs coming out of a river, which seems impossible since fire and water don't mix. Anyways, this typically happens a couple of days in October and May when the Earth is closest to the sun. According to the locals, the river is home to a big serpent that breathes fire. The fireballs that come out of the river are from the serpent spewing them out of its mouth. In fact, a number of people have claimed to see the serpent and provided a number of photos for evidence. Sadly, they're always grainy. The other explanation is that they are caused by pockets of methane bubbling up from the river. But as I mentioned before, we still don't know for sure. In our 4th spot today we have the UFO Battle. In 1942 in Los Angeles, something flew over the skies. Now, the country was on high alert at this time because of the attack on Pearl Harbor, so they were monitoring everything very carefully. When the thing flew over the sky, they shot at it with 1,500 shells, and it still managed to stay in the sky. When the shots were fired, people woke up and were like, "Whoa, what's going on?" That's when they saw weird lights in the sky along with a spaceship. To this day, no one knows what they really saw. The government was like, "Oh, no, it was just a weather balloon. Yeah, you guys are just freaking yourself out." But if it was a weather balloon, why were they firing at it? And how come no wreckage of the balloon was ever found? Just saying, guys, just saying. In our third spot, we have spontaneous human combustion. Now, I've talked about this briefly before with the case of Matilda Rooney, a woman who literally just exploded one night, like somehow a fire started within her and then boom. Well, this isn't the first time that it happened. It also happened in 1951 with a woman named Mary Reeser. One day, a man was delivering her mail. He tried the doorknob and noticed that the handle was warm. He also noticed that her apartment was warm, which was odd because all the windows were open. When he entered the apartment, nothing inside was weird or out of place. But there was a pile of ashes in the corner and Mary's left foot. That's all that was left of Mary. Isn't that so weird? Just somehow she into thin air. For her to turn into a pile of ashes like that, she would have had to have been in a 3,000-degree fire that burned for several hours. So that's just freaky. In our second spot today, we have the Belmez Faces. In 1971, a woman named Maria Gomez was cleaning up her kitchen when she noticed a stain forming on her concrete kitchen floor. Later, the stain developed into a creepy, disturbing face. Not only that, but the stain would move positions on the floor. Maria tried to scrub the face away, but it did not work. In fact, her husband ended up destroying the concrete floor and then re-cementing it all. But the face mysteriously reappeared a week later. That's not all. Soon, images of these weird stained faces appeared all over the house. Later, the floor under the kitchen was excavated and they found 10 skeletons buried underneath there. So could it be their faces that were appearing all over the house? To this day, the stained faces are still there and no one knows how they formed. And in our number one spot, we have Betty and Barney Hill. This is one of the most famous alien abduction stories of all time. So husband and wife Barney and Betty Hill were driving home one night after having a vacation at Niagara Falls. It was September 19th, 1961 and everything was going well for the two. That was until around midnight when they saw this weird bright falling star in the sky. Then they were like, okay, whoa, it's not a falling star, it looks like it's following us, whatever it is. So Barney pulled over and sure enough, this bright thing was coming right at them. When it got closer, they saw humanoids inside of a rotating 40-foot long UFO. The next thing they remember is hearing a bunch of beeps and then they passed out. They woke up 2 hours later and were 35 miles down the road from where they originally pulled over. They reported what happened to them and obviously people were skeptical, but a lot of things proved otherwise. Both Barney and Betty had scrapes on the top of their shoes, suggesting they had been dragged. Betty also had these marks on her dress as well, and they underwent a series of interviews and everything they said always matched. To this day, we don't know what to think. Did they really get abducted by aliens? If they didn't, then what the heck happened to them?
Starting with number 10, ever heard of the phrase once in a blue moon? Well, there's a reason for that. Blue moons are actually fairly common and usually occur every 2 years. Full moons follow a 12-month cycle, though it takes around 29.5 for the cycle to complete, meaning the 12 full cycles occur every 354 days, 11 days short of a full year. So eventually an extra 13th moon occurs known as the blue moon. But what's actually even more rare are 2 blue moons in 1 year. The last time this occurred was in 2018 and scientists anticipate that this will happen again in 2037. So keep a tally and make sure to catch all 14 that year.
Coming at number 9 is the Online Cannibal. I thought I knew about all the quote-unquote Hannibals in the world, but clearly I don't. Armin Meiwes was just your typical computer technician. I mean, if your typical computer technician enjoys cannibalism, then yeah, just your average Joe. Armin used to go on various websites advocating cannibalism and was a fan of the Cannibal Cafe, where people would post about their interest in cannibalism and began wanting to do it. He then began putting up adverts on the cafe looking for someone to volunteer themselves to get eaten. I mean, at least he was asking for volunteers, not just going out and killing people. His ads said looking for a well-built 18 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed, which I mean is as polite as it can get if you look at the context. He eventually found a willing volunteer called Bernd Brandes who went to Armin's house on March 9th, 2001. Brandes gave him permission to amputate his penis so that they could eat it together, so Armin fed him 20 sleeping pills and set up a bath for him after the amputation. The two tried to eat the penis, but it was just too chewy. When Brandes finally got out of the bath, he fainted due to immense blood loss, and now Armin was screwed. He was like, should I kill him? Should I not? He never agreed to being killed, but he did end up killing Brandes by stabbing him in the throat and then hanging his body on a meat hook. Keep in mind the two recorded the entire night, but I thoroughly hope the tape was destroyed. It definitely wasn't, but I hope. Armin continued to eat Brandes' body for 10 months post-murder. I mean, is human flesh even good for that long? Don't we have a best before date? I swear we do. Police eventually searched his home after he tried to solicit more victims online, and they found the videotape as well as the body parts that hadn't been eaten yet, and in a shocking plot twist turn of events, he apologized and then became a vegetarian. Guys, if this cannibal can become vegetarian, surely you can become vegan. At number 8 we have the 20,000 orphans, and this one happened right here in Canada, which I'm not proud of. Now back in the 50s, the Premier of Quebec was Maurice Duplessis, and he was a very devout Catholic. Now one day he decided the Catholic Church should be the only caretaker of the alcoholics, the poor, the unwed mothers, and all the orphans in the population. Trusting the church completely, he signed over the responsibility of all hospitals, orphanages, and schools to the church. But sadly, this was not a foolproof plan. Most of the orphans weren't even orphans, they were just born out of wedlock, but the church didn't approve of that, so they took the children away. So orphanages slowly started overflowing, and the government didn't have enough money to subsidize them. They were getting more money for psychiatric patients than they were the orphans, so the church decided to do something. According to the Lunatic Asylum Act, you could commit anyone to an insane asylum to A. maintain social order, B. help them, or C. care for them. So citing the maintenance of social order, they put 20,000 orphans into mental asylums. All of them were mentally able and fit, but they were admitted anyway. Those orphans said they couldn't maintain a normal, healthy adult existence, and despite all that, Maurice and the Catholic Church never apologized for ruining those children's lives. That's a long apology overdue, my friends. Filling our number 7 slot are the Silent Twins. Now I've heard this story many times now, but I know a lot of people still haven't, and it is a scarily weird event, so I thought I would just include it. So June and Jennifer Gibbons were a pair of identical twins born in Barbados but who grew up in Wales. In school, the girls used to be the only people of colour there, which made them feel isolated, and to add to that isolation, both girls spoke so fast that understanding them was very hard. They were so severely bullied at school that the principal used to actually let them leave early every day to avoid being bullied. Their way of talking slowly got more and more unintelligible, to the point no one could understand them except each other. The twins at this point spoke to no one but each other and their little sister, and at school would refuse to read and write. In an attempt to get the girls to communicate with others, they were sent to different boarding schools in which they both became catatonic and withdrawn until reunited. By the 80s, the girls were committing crimes like arson, vandalism, and theft, and were later admitted to the mental health institution Broadmoor Hospital. They stayed there for 12 years, and the girls always had an agreement that if one of them died, the other had to speak to other people and live a normal life. During their 12-year stay, they began believing one of them absolutely had to die in order for the other to go on, so Jennifer agreed to be the sacrifice. One day when the girls were being transferred to another clinic, Jennifer could not be awakened upon arrival and then later died of acute myocarditis, which is a sudden inflammation of the heart. And that literally came out of nowhere because there were no drugs in her system, no poison. The only evidence was that the day before she kept saying she was dying and then the next day just died in June's lap. Now at number 6 is Dr. Marcel Petio. Marcel was a French doctor and a serial killer. I'm assuming one was his day job and the other was just a hobby. And you know what they say, don't quit your day job. Now how he killed people was during the occupation he would promise Jewish people and other people wanted by the Germans that he could secure safe passage for them outside of France. He'd tell them they would travel to Argentina through Portugal for 25,000 francs a person. Once people would pay him the money and go to his house, Marcel would tell them that Argentine officials required all entrants to be inoculated against any and all diseases. And as a doctor, his victims would trust him to deliver the injection needed. But that injection wasn't a vaccine, it was cyanide. The injection would obviously kill them and then he would take all their belongings and valuables and dispose of their bodies. At the start he would just dump them in the Seine River, but that seemed to be a lot of work for him, so he changed up his tactics and for more convenience would drown their bodies in acid or quicklime in his basement and incinerate them. He was caught when his neighbors complained to the police about a foul-ass stench coming from his house and the amount of smoke coming out of his chimney. In preparation of a fire hazard, which is what the police thought it was, police called firemen to his house who found a huge fire in his basement, and in the fire, human remains. Coming in at number 5 is the Chichijima Incident. Now let's flash back to World War II for a second. In September of 1944, Japanese forces shot down 9 American planes near the Japanese island of Chichijima. All 9 of the airmen tried to escape, but 8 were recaptured and 1 escaped, that one being 20-year-old George H.W. Bush. After the capture of the others, it was found out they had been brutally tortured and beaten before being killed. Each one was beheaded, and then American authorities found out that body parts of 4 of the victims were then eaten by Japanese officers. I don't even know what to say about this one. Just imagine Bush wasn't the one who survived and he was also eaten. He would have never become president. Would his son have become president? I don't even know. I feel like America would have turned out very different, I feel. What do you guys think? At number 4 is The Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run, and I wish that was a title of a cute Enid Blyton book, but 'twas not, my friends. Was not. Also known as the Cleveland Torso Murderer, this person was never identified, but boy oh boy did he create hell in their 30s. He, they, she, you never know. The person was suspected to have killed 12 people, but modern research points to around 20 victims. Most of the victims were classed as the working poor and lived in shanty towns, which made them easier to target. The murderer would behead every single victim and then dismember them, usually severing their torso in half or at least severing their appendages. Had to be one or the other, am I right? All the male victims were castrated and a lot of them had chemicals all over their bodies. The victims ended up being found way after they were killed, sometimes more than a year later, but identifying them was the problem since they had no heads, just torsos. I mean, last time I checked, you can't identify someone from their belly button or their nipples, so what to do? Now the serial murders had everyone in Ohio worried, and the murderer even taunted Elliot Ness, the guy working on the case, by leaving the torsos of 2 of the victims in full view of his office. I mean, he didn't just rub salt in Elliot's wound, he just rubbed the torsos right in his wounds. I know that doesn't make sense, but Elliot would get it. Now at number 2 is the Jonestown Massacre. I know, you guys have heard it all before, but regardless, I did have to put it on the list. If you know the story, feel free to skip to number 1, but if not, stay tuned for a wildly sinister story. The People's Temple Agricultural Project, better known as Jonestown, was a massive city which was actually just a cult run by Jim Jones located in Guyana. The base of the cult was originally in Indianapolis, but after receiving heavy criticism, he moved his cult from location to location until finally leasing 3,800 acres of land in Georgetown. In the summer of 1977, Jones and his hundreds of followers moved to Jonestown, and by 1978, the population of the city had peaked at under 900 people. Life in the commune was bad, but for the followers, they were reaching some sort of enlightenment. Jones's mental and physical health started declining rapidly. He had developed lung cancer and was actively abusing drugs like Valium, LSD, and barbiturates, to name a few. few. Reporters and Congressman Leo Ryan came to Jonestown and were all assassinated. 5 people died, and despite later reporters saying they would say Jonestown was in good standing, the damage was done. Jim claimed he had failed and that all was lost. That night, a broadcast was made for every follower to return to their house. During that time, aides made huge metal tubs with grape flavored Kool-Aid that was poisoned with cyanide, Valium, chlorohydrate, and Phenergan. Jim called everyone to the pavilion after that, and he gave the death speech to his followers that was recorded and can actually be heard online, and soon after the members started drinking the poisoned Kool-Aid one by one. First was Roletta Paul and her 1-year-old infant, like in around half an hour for adults. That day, 918 people died in a mass suicide, which was the largest single loss of American civilian life until 9/11 happened. And finally, at number 1 is the doll maker. This one actually made my skin crawl, like it's disgusting. So Anatoly Moskvin was a Russian philologist who did unspeakable things. Now, it started when he was a young schoolboy. He would often visit cemeteries and would blame his obsession with the dead on the fact he saw a funeral procession for an 11-year-old girl when he was younger. Apparently, funeral goers forced him to kiss the corpse's face, who he didn't even know that well. As he grew older, he got more and more interested in death, the occult. He had a library consisting of 60,000 books about it and a huge collection of dolls. But dolls they were not. Despite being described as a genius eccentric by fellow academics, Anatoly was arrested in November of 2011 after police started investigating a slew of grave desecrations in several cemeteries. When they stormed his house, they found 26 corpses, but he'd actually desecrated a record 150 graves. God knows what he did to the rest of those bodies. He made the child corpses into actual dolls. He would mummify each one to preserve their bodies. He would then wrap their limbs in strips of cloth to make them seem more full before dressing them up in wigs and brightly colored children's clothes. All these details convinced his parents, who he was living with, that they were homemade dolls and not real people. Like, how dumb can you be? He claimed it took him 10 years to assemble all the dolls, and since his parents traveled often, they had no idea what he was up to. He was declared to have paranoid schizophrenia, which saved him jail time but put him in an asylum. When asked why he did all of this, he said he had a lot of sympathy for dead children and felt they should be brought back to life. He put their remains in dolls' clothes so they could have functional bodies when they did come back to life. He knew he was committing a crime but felt that children were just calling out to him, begging to be rescued. I think my face says it all at that point.